Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about this silly ass line that people say, and people in my own family will do this. They'll say, carbs make me fat, right? Carbs make me fat. And let me explain why people think that, who eat a lot of carbs, who end up getting fat, and what's really going on, because it's important to understand what's actually happening here. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skill at my crafting a little bit. Let's talk about this. And I do think it's interesting because I have actual family members and stuff who do this, who by all standards have been doing ketogenic diets for a couple of years and they're still fat. Meaning they're not as fat as they were, but they're still fat. And I don't mean fat by bodybuilding standards. Notice my channel name. This is not a competitive bodybuilding channel. I do not approve of that. So people will come over when we're talking about health and fitness and they'll be like, well, you're not 7% body fat. So, yeah, drop that nonsense, guys. I am very, very much considered to be in the athletic body fat range, particularly for my age group. I'm talking about legitimately fat, people who got a belly, right? If you have a gut, you're fat. That's what we're talking about here. Talking about men over 20% body fat and women over 30%. Well, I know people who are like that, who did lose 20 pounds doing, say, a ketogenic diet and while doing it full time, who are still fat. Clearly not the carbs are not the problem. It's your total caloric intake. And here's where the cognitive dissonance happens, because people aren't understanding what they're calling carbs is usually a massive combination of refined sugars with enormous amounts of dietary fat, right? That's a recipe for disaster right there. That is why we have problems in Western society. Everyone wants to talk about it being, oh, it's just this. The vegans will scream it's the animal products, right? As if you can't get massively fat eating fried vegetables, right? As if you can't get up to 400 pounds doing that. Stupidity. The ketogenic people will scream, oh, it's the sugar doing it. It's the refined carbs doing it. But you can go up to 400 pounds on a keto diet too if you really tried. You see the problem there? It's not the issue. The issue is overall calories, and it's the combinations of foods. And if it was carbs, then the longest lived, healthiest societies on earth wouldn't be carbohydrate based, and they are. There's where your cognitive dissonance happens. They'll be like, well, they're not eating refined carbs, really? Because I think white rice counts as a refined carb. Now, white rice isn't a refined sugar, and it's still a single ingredient food. You show me a society, any society out of all the ones out there who white rice is their staple caloric source. In other words, at least 50% of the calories of that country come from white rice. Do any of those countries, any of those societies have an obesity problem? Any of them have a diabetes problem? Any of them have a heart disease problem? No, they don't. White rice is clearly not causing it then. What about fruit? Oh, it's because it's still starchy. Well, that's true. Yeah, starch, it's actually kind of hard to get really obese on starchy carbs as your primary fuel source. You got to throw some fat in with there, some other stuff with it to really make it happen. People who usually follow starch-based diets, that's actually one of the solutions, successful solutions for reversing diabetes, actually. That is one of the most successful dietary methods for reversing type 2 diabetes, is to put someone on just basically an all-starch diet for the most part. All right, so the anti-carb people, they need to let that sink in and say, okay, so wait a minute, that's not right. Well, it is right. It is right, and it works. What about fruit? Well, cultures that eat the most fruit tend to have low body fats as a demographic, because they're not eating table sugar, guys. There's a difference between an apple, a banana, and a Coca-Cola, right? Hopefully you can understand the difference. They're not the same thing. Yeah, they both have sugar in them, but they're not comparable in terms of appetite, energy, nutrition, things like that. So here's what it comes down to. It's hyperpalatable, calorically dense foods that's making you fat. And being sedentary, not exercising, not working out, not training. That combination is what's causing it. That's what's causing it. And when you look at the foods, the treat foods that really push people over the limit, because let's be realistic here, even if you wanted to blame the hamburger, You're like, well, you know, there's some refined flour and there's some animal fat and all that stuff in there. You know, honestly, there's plenty of people out there who eat burgers for lunch every day who have normal, healthy body fats. It's when we start piling in all this other stuff, that's where we really run into problems. Look at what we think of as the real foods that will put weight on you. Ice cream, your milkshakes, pies, cakes. I mean, look at any of those things we think of as real treat foods, dessert foods. Perfect example. How many of those, when you look at it, you're dealing with a lot of table sugar combined with a lot of fat? Those are high-fat foods. They're high-sugar foods also. I mean, that is a combination, extremely sweet, way sweeter than anything found in nature because it's loaded full of table sugar with a bunch of butter and shortening and everything else put in it, right? You go take a pie, take a slice of pie and look at your breakdown. Is it a high carb food? Yeah, so people say, well, it's carb, that's carbs for making fat. Like, look how much fat is in there. A lot of those high carb foods that people are talking about are like 40% or more fat by calorie. So what you're doing is when you start combining refined sugars with a lot of fat, that's a recipe for disaster. Someone who is not burning through an enormous amount of energy training, being an athlete, things like that's a bad combination because you're going to overeat that, right? Because we crave salty, fatty, and sweet. Well, you're combining fat with the sweet. And it is far more calorically dense. A lot of those foods are far more calorically dense than they would be even if they were pure sugar. Like if they were just candy, wouldn't have that problem. But go look at, a candy bar. Look at the combination of all the fat mixed in with all the sugar. That's what's contributing. For most people, it's the dessert foods. And it's getting that soda with the meal because, again, you're just going to drink straight liquid sugar, right? It isn't going to fill you. It's going to be empty calories that your body is going to burn off for fuel, and then you're going to store all the fat that you eat with it. And I'm not telling people that you should sit around consuming a really high table sugar diet and just cut the fat out, that's going to work, because no, you're going to end up being hungry, really hungry all the time. And you're still going to get some fat in your diet or you're going to die, and you're going to end up storing a little bit of fat that you eat. Right? So you can't sustain yourselves on an all table sugar diet. And that's the ridiculous part when you try to explain that. Is that people who say, well, you're not right, and they think that they're really going to try it. Yeah, dude, you're not going to live on Mountain Dew. Best of luck to you with that. Like, well, I'll just eat Mountain Dew and Greek yogurt, fat-free Greek yogurt, and prove to you, it's like, no, you're going to die if you do that. You're going to have a deficient diet that is going to kill you. You actually might not get fat doing that, but it's going to kill you. You're going to feel terrible. But the whole point we get to with all this, it's not the carbs that are making you fat. It's the fact that you're eating really calorically dense foods that are usually a big combination of refined sugars with tons of fat and all that together. I mean, that's a perfect example. Go back to the other meal. Let's not even talk about dessert foods. Let's talk about when you go to McDonald's. You might have been okay if you just ate the burger and had a water. And it's going to piss some people for a diet soda. Oh my God, aspartame. You might have been okay if you had that, but what do you throw in with it? You're like, well, I'm going to eat this 500-calorie burger, 600-calorie burger. That's actually not that bad. I mean, for even a person who doesn't train, a 600-calorie meal is not going to make you fat. You eat 3 of those a day and probably lose weight. It's not a lot of food, though. But what do people get with it? They get the French fries with it. So now they're combining a bunch of oil, salty, oily stuff with a starch. Potatoes are great. Potatoes are great for weight loss and great for weight management. But now you've fried it in a bunch of peanut oil. So now it's fatty and salty that makes you crave more. You're going to eat all those fries. Then what are we going to throw in with it? A soda. They're going to have all these empty, sugary calories thrown in on top of it. And before long, now you're sitting on, a 1,200-calorie meal from McDonald's. And you're going to eat all of it. And what's going to happen when it pushes you into a caloric surplus? Well, you're going to burn that soda off first. That's going to be your immediate fuel source. Our body loves carbs. Our body doesn't actually store carbs as fat. It loves carbs. It uses it as fuel. But you've given it plenty of fuel in the form of that bread, that soda, all of that, and your body's going to thrive on that. That's great. It's a great energy source. And then what's it going to do with all the fat? What's it going to do with all the peanut oil in the French fries? What's it going to do with all the extra fat in the meat? Well, you're just going to store that. You're going to store that. That's what's going to happen with your caloric surplus from it. So it's not the carbs that made you fat. And people say, well, if you just cut the carbs out, that wouldn't happen. You could just eat all fat. Well, no, because you're going to burn the fat for fuel, then you're going to store the extra fat. So if you ate the same calories of mostly fat, you still get the same effect. But people will look at all this and say, oh, it's the carbs that are making me fat. Yeah, that's what's making me fat. No, it's your caloric surplus, and it's not all the carbs doing it. Go live on beans and potatoes for a while. Go eat beans and potatoes as your primary calorie source for most people who are fat, and watch what happens to the scale when you start losing weight. Those are carbs. And I'm not telling you to go do a vegan diet, but I'm saying if you got the majority of your calories from beans and potatoes, and I mean white potatoes, most people out there who are obese would be losing weight. The majority would be losing weight on that. So it's not carbs making you fat. It's your massive caloric surplus that's making you fat. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.